Welcome to This Is Lit, a podcast where we drink and talk about our favorite books. I'm Karina.
And I'm Casey, and this is a special Maternity Month episode of This Is Lit. So raise a glass and let's get started. Okay, Karina, do you want to tell everybody what we're drinking today?
Yes, we are drinking lovely sweet Shiraz from Jam Jar. Longtime listeners of the podcast know that this is a cute backstory wine for us. Look up that episode if you're not familiar with our cute backstory.
I could not tell you which it is. I just know it's there. But the other important thing about this wine is that it's a twist top because we're cheap.
Hey!
All right, so grab your glass. Today we are talking about, well, first off, as you may know, Liz has had her babies.
Yeah.
So it's, February is her maternity leave. Karina's helping me out today, and we'll have another podcast friend to help us out on the next episode for this month. And today we are discussing Philip Pullman's The Golden Compass, the first book in the His Dark Materials trilogy.
Yes.
So, Karina had read The Golden Compass before.
I did.
That's
I
actually
read it.
what we have to get into now before we can start talking.
Yeah, I read The Golden Compass about a year ago and just tore through it and enjoyed it. And so I recommended it to Casey when they asked me about books I would like to discuss on the show. And I was going to reread it in anticipation of recording this episode, but I didn't. I got a few chapters in and did not get the chance to complete.
She got exactly 4 chapters in, and y'all know that means that she has to take a punishment shot. So what are you taking a shot of today?
Is it really a punishment if I enjoy it?
Well, maybe not, but that's what we call it around here. So what are you drinking?
That whiskey that we had on our liquor cart.
It's
Jim
Jim
Beam.
Beam.
I couldn't remember.
Yep, she's having a shot of Jim Beam, so cheers.
Hey.
Well, that's not bad. That's a pretty good shot take there. Karina doesn't always throw her shots back.
Not
in the
really.
Traditional way.
I'm getting better, which is horrible news for me personally. When you get better at taking shots, that's when you should get scared, honestly.
So anyway, now that she's had her punishment shot, I'd just like to point out that I read the entire book in like 3 hours.
Well, I'm proud of you. Some of us were working that day.
Anyway, we're talking about The Golden Compass. Karina's read it before. I had not. Actually, the reason I hadn't read the book was because it came out in 95.
Yeah, 95 in the UK.
Yep.
Oh, it was actually titled Northern Lights in its, I guess, UK version.
The more you know.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, so it came out in 1995. So actually, we were both very young when it came out. But
I was not yet 3 years old.
But it got more popular right before the movie came out. Like, I remember people talking about it.
The first film adaptation was
07, right?
in 2007.
Yeah.
It was a Hollywood, feature film
So before
adaptation.
the movie came out, maybe a couple years before, it kind of had I don't know if it was just like a revival or how popular it had been the first time.
Well, it looks like the trilogy finished in about 2000.
Oh, okay. So the trilogy had finished. Because, I was in middle school and I remember people talking about it and being like, hey, if you like Lord of the Rings, if you like Harry Potter, you'll probably like His Dark Materials. And I was actually not allowed to read it because apparently maybe in one of the later books they kill God or something. The book is definitely very critical of the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
Or a fantasy version of the Catholic Church. Yeah,
the book itself is very, it's anti, not necessarily religion, I wouldn't say, but maybe anti-organized religion.
Yeah. But at any rate, I was not allowed to read it growing up, and then I just never got around to it as I got older, so this was a great opportunity to read it. It is a children's book. It's like a young reader, I think is what it's described at, which is always confusing. The distinction between children's book and young adult, there's a small space in there for juvenile fiction.
I always, when I think in terms of what age kids should read a book or watch a movie, see a particular piece of media, I think usually if they're about the age of the protagonist, if there's a child protagonist, so in this case, Lyra. Which does it say in the book how
she tells someone that she's 11 at one point, but she I think is lying. I think she's saying she's younger than she is. She might be 12 or 13.
Yeah,
that's
she's
the vibe
right
I
around
get
there.
from that. So
Probably I could look that up, but I'm fine guessing.
Yes. Have you seen the movie?
I have not.
I
don't
either,
think
because again,
it was 2007, and it was Daniel Craig as Lord Asriel and Nicole Kidman, I think, as Mrs. Coulter.
As Mrs. Coulter, yeah, or Ms. Coulter. Yes. So yeah, I never saw that one again because I was still in high school and I was still not allowed to interact with the series.
Yeah, the thing about me and Casey is that we both come from more like of a religious background and upbringing. So I don't know that I was ever like forbidden or like I knew it was like a piece of media that was frowned upon, and I never knew enough about it to know like what, you know, anything that might interest me. So I never sought it out.
That makes sense.
Yeah. But yeah, we both came to this book in our adult lives, having that childhood background of like, you know, going through
a
religious upbringing and coming out the other side of it not super happy with it.
A little bit disillusioned. Very, very similar to what Lyra is going through in this series. Yeah, so of course there was the 2007 movie, which we've neither one seen, and then the HBO series that just came out with Lin-Manuel Miranda and
James McAvoy is Lord Asriel.
That's right.
I can't remember her name.
Ruth Wilson.
Ruth Wilson
is Mrs. Coulter. Yes. So, but let's get into the actual story of the novel here, because that's what we read. So, the book starts introducing us to Lyra as she is getting into some trouble.
Oh, she's 12 years old, apparently. You were
okay,
right.
There you go. She's getting into some trouble, and she is trying to check out a room in the college that she lives in that's forbidden for women to go into.
Yeah. One of the things I super enjoyed about this book when I was reading it the first time and when I was rereading it was like the care and the detail put into the Oxford setting.
Yes, I noticed that.
It has to do a lot at the beginning of the book because it has to kind of subtly clue you in that this world is kind of like ours, but not exactly. Like, it has to introduce the whole concept of daemons, and it has to place Lyra in this weird world where she doesn't have like a traditional mom and dad family, but you know, she has
a family.
It takes a village to raise a child. It takes an entire college to raise Lyra Belacqua.
So there's a bunch of scholars at the college and the master of the college who have basically been charged with Lyra's upbringing. And then there are some maids in the kitchen and in the staff that like basically make sure that she bathes and eats.
And she spends her time, a lot of it, with the children of servants, and children from other colleges or children from the townspeople.
And the Egyptian children. Mm-hmm. So, I didn't understand this necessarily. Are the Egyptians, they're just like people who live on the river? Are they Egyptian? Because like the world of this book, again, it's not ours, but it's similar. It has a lot of the same countries and states.
Yeah, I don't know that they're Egyptian at all.
I mean, because it's spelled exactly
right.
Like it.
I think
so
they're
just like
more analogous to like Roma people.
Oh, that makes more sense.
Yeah, or like travelers.
Sense. Okay, but they're on the water instead of necessarily on land.
They live in
like reed boats.
What are some of the other like early differences, like ways that Philip Pullman distinguishes the setting?
Well, the big one, like I think about the Egyptians. I also think about the roles within the school, because it takes place in, I think, like the timeline is what I try to figure out. It's not modern. It's not like it takes place in 2000 or 1995. But it's not so far back as to be like high fantasy, like it would be Middle Ages. It seems like it's somewhere in like the age of industry or something.
Yeah, definitely has that kind of vibe to it. There's almost a steampunk type element where like Lyra talks about the anbaric lights. I remember the first time reading the book being like, what anbaric, what is that? And it's like what they have instead of electric lights.
Yes.
So it's like kind of things that achieve the same, like they kind of have the same ideas and concepts and
Philip Pullman
modern
does a lot
functions, but via different means.
And Pullman does a lot of show don't tell, which I'm kind of half and half on. Like in general, I think that's good advice, but in this book, there were several times where I kind of had to stop and like it distracted me from the narrative trying to figure out what something was, because instead of just being like, this means this, or this is, you know, synonymous with this, he just like puts it in context, and most of the time it works really well, but there were a couple times that I definitely caught myself being like, what is that? And some of them were because of the narrative, and some of them were because Lyra didn't know them. And the book is from third person limited. It's from Lyra's point of view, in the same way that Harry Potter is from Harry's point of view.
Yeah. No, I definitely, that idea or that feeling of encountering things and not knowing what they are, it reminded me a lot of one of our other favorite authors, Jasper Fforde.
Yes.
Whenever
Fforde does that really well, though. Yeah. Very well.
When he's written across like a couple of different universes or settings, and every time like there's things that are different about it from others, and it always takes me a little while to adjust and learn
Thursday Next is set in a universe where the Crimean War didn't end.
Right, yeah. And things like that.
Yeah, so just like very little things. But this has a similar vibe to it. So it's kind of steampunk era. So you also notice that in society, like the expectations for like the men versus the expectations for the women. At the very beginning of the book, Lyra is sneaking into a room that she's forbidden from being in based on her gender. So there's still like an element of like, I mean, obviously there's still differences between different genders and things, but like this is very much in like the Victorian era where there's like, women are beneath men in society.
Or even, I think specifically within like academic circles, probably even recent as like, the early 20th century.
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to pinpoint the timeline here, but I'd say it's a kind of steampunk Victorian, maybe inching towards the 1900s. But at any rate, the book starts with Lyra witnessing the master of the college putting poison into Lord Asriel's favorite wine. And Lord Asriel, we're told, is Lyra's uncle, and he is also a member, he's one of the scholars of the college, but he doesn't spend a lot of his time there.
No, he
travels and like adventures, and it's kind of vague because again it's from the point of view of a child, and does some kind of research outside of the college, and everyone knows that he's come back to the college to do a presentation and ask for some money. And for some reason the master of the college is trying to kill him.
Yeah. So Lyra's pretty upset about that. She's hiding in this room that she's not supposed to be in.
And actually, before we go any further, we really should have talked about the most critical difference between our world and this one. The daemons.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we mentioned them, like, once.
We mentioned them, but the daemons are such a huge part of the narrative that we can't just, like, mention them and then go into the plot. Yeah. Because, like, then we have to talk about characters.
And that's another one of those concepts that I think Pullman...
It's very much show don't tell.
Pullman introduces really quickly and really fully, and you just get from context that, like, this... You get immediately that this is Lyra's, like, closest friend, closest confidant. If she's sneaking into a room she's not supposed to be found in... Like, anybody that's with her is going to be somebody who's tight.
His name is Pantalaimon? She calls him Pan. I'm going to call him
for
Pan.
Short. Yeah, Pan's
from
easier.
Here on. So Pan is a daemon, which means that he is the external...
he's like her soul.
Yeah, he's like her soul.
Lyra's
he's like
soul.
An external representation of her soul. And he is an animal. But because Lyra is a child, he can change shapes.
Yes, and in this universe, once you kind of reach your maturity and you've kind of
puberty,
settled on somewhat of an identity, is when your daemon takes its final permanent form.
So Lyra's has not yet done that. When he's first introduced, he's a moth.
Yes, he's a little moth. He's flitting about. He's very small and quiet. He's also, I think, at times, like a little small mouse that
he's a mouse a lot. He's also a marmoset several times. A seagull. He does a lot of shape changing, honestly, more than any other daemon that we're going to see in the story, even of the other children. But yeah, we really have to talk about the daemons because every human being, as far as we know in this book, every human being has a daemon, and the daemon not only is with them all the time, like in the sense of like they bring them along everywhere, like physically they cannot be more than a few yards apart from each other without causing themselves both of them great pain. The other thing that's about daemons that is interesting to me personally is that 99% of the time, your daemon is of the quote-unquote opposite gender that you are.
Yeah.
So Lyra is a little girl. Her daemon is male. Lord Asriel, who we meet shortly, is a man. He has a female snow leopard as his daemon. I think there's mentioned a kitchen staff at Oxford, a man who has a daemon who is the same gender as he is. But that's the one person mentioned very offhandedly in the course of a 400-page book. And it's not something that is brought up specifically until later in the book. You just see the pattern occur over and over and over again.
Right.
And even when it's brought up specifically, it's just like a throwaway line. But to me, it's really very interesting, especially taking into context any kind of non-binary and trans people who exist. Like, if you were identified by doctors as a little girl when you were born, would your daemon that appeared at that time be male? And if you transitioned to male, would your daemon also transition to female?
Oh, damn. That's a wild question.
Right. And if you're non-binary, what is your daemon? Because male and female are supposedly opposites, quote unquote. But, like, if they are, there's no analog to that for, like, non-binary, right? Like, would your daemon also be non-binary? Then it would be the same gender as you, except for that non-binary is not one gender.
Yeah.
And again, this book was written in 1995. I'm not expecting Philip Pullman to get into a deep gender discussion in a book for, 12-year-olds. However, it is interesting to me, especially as we get further into the book and we get further into the implications of dust, which we'll get to later. But right now, we're here. Lyra is hiding in the cupboard while this meeting goes on, or before this meeting goes on. In the wardrobe,
actually.
In the wardrobe.
Wink, wink, C.S. Lewis, nudge, nudge.
Yes, because this book is, and I would say that, I thought about that, actually. I'm getting off track again, but really quick. People compare this to Harry Potter. I feel like Harry Potter, even the early books, are intended for a slightly older audience. Mainly because of how this book and how Narnia are similar and how Harry Potter is different. And I think I've told you this before about the Narnia books. I really, really enjoyed the Narnia movies because I felt like they gave a lot of depth to the characters. And that is one thing that the characters did not have in the books. I love the books, but the children in the Narnia books are just there. Like, every now and then they'll show flashes of personality or insight, but, like, they're just mainly there to move the plot along. Like, the book is more plot focused than it is character focused.
Yeah.
And while this is not quite to that level, it still is, like, more than Harry Potter. Like, Harry Potter, I feel like, was a book written about the character.
Really? I feel like we get a really strong sense of Lyra's character.
I think I think we do later, but to me it felt like it took a while for anything to happen with Lyra's character. She was like, I guess her entire personality was just like, I just want to hang out with my friend, and like a 12-year-old. Like, I just want to hang out with my friends and play.
But I feel like we get a really good read on what she values. Like, she wants to hang out with her friends and play, but she's also willing to, like, kind of sass, like, the people in charge of her. She's willing to, like, go out and kind of fight other groups of people for entertainment and attention and affection. Like, she's willing. She's somebody who kind of runs her own days, and I just feel like you get a really good sense of who she is really early on.
I don't know. Like, I was not connecting with her character, to be honest, until about just slightly before Roger went missing. And then when Roger went missing, again, it goes back to the show don't tell. There's like, he does a really good job of showing and not telling, but there are some passages in here that are just huge chunks where he's like, Lyra was like this. Lyra did these things. And it's like kind of a fine line between saying Lyra did these things and writing a scene where Lyra does the thing, right? Like, the line between those is very thin. So sometimes
I guess I feel like we get a good amount of Lyra, like, disobeying what adults tell her, or flouting convention, not being comfortable with the roles that people assign her.
I'm not saying that I feel this way about Lyra all the way through the book.
Yeah.
But I felt like the time at Oxford, a lot of it was Pullman being like, Lyra is this way. And then after Oxford, whenever she's with Ms. Coulter, and then when she goes on to the North, it's like Lyra does this thing, and it tells you something about her character. Like, Lyra is running away from Miss Coulter because what Miss Coulter is doing is morally wrong, and she doesn't want to be a part of it. Like, I don't know. It's a kind of very vague distinction to make, but I just did notice that I just didn't connect with Lyra until about a third of the way into the book. That's just a
damn. That's so weird.
We
stan Lyra Belacqua.
I know, I like her. And first off, it's Lyra Silvertongue. How dare you? Second off, it's not that I don't like her. I do like the character. By the time the book is over, I have a very strong understanding of her character, and I have a high opinion of her and how she deals with the world around her. I just felt like I didn't get that from her until she was put in situations where she had to make hard choices. Like before that, her attitude seemed very, it wasn't that she didn't have a personality. Her personality didn't have anything meaningful to it that I could grasp onto. It was like, I like to disobey authority, and I like to push the boys in the mud and run around and sink boats, and I have fun. And like, that's fine. That's just, a lot of children are that way. Like getting into Lyra's like loyalty, like I'm going to cross the world to get back my friend, or getting into her, determination, or how smart she is when she starts to learn how to read the compass. Like it's just I think a personal preference thing of like, I liked to see that dynamic change and growth in her character, as opposed to just like, here is a loud little girl who likes to cause trouble. Which admittedly the entire first chapter is that, because she is again in this wardrobe, hiding out, and then Lord Asriel comes in before his meeting with the other scholars to have a glass of wine.
And Lyra stops him because she knows it's poisoned.
And so when he finds out it's poison, he makes her go back into the closet and eavesdrop for him while he shows off his findings from the north. She listens to some of it. She falls asleep in the closet. And whenever he comes to fetch her, he wants to know what she heard the person who was planning to poison him say. Just a bunch of... There's a lot of intrigue in this book. I will say Pullman does a really good job of writing intrigue, especially at a level that is still comprehensible for a younger reader.
Yeah.
But yeah, so...
Yeah, I feel like definitely as a kid reading this, I would have identified with Lyra, like, wanting to hide where, like, the adults are and know what's going on. And it's a really, really accessible feeling.
Yeah.
If you've ever been a kid.
But at any rate, Lord Asriel is going north. He will not take Lyra with him, and she's upset because, again, she's being raised by these scholars, but this is the only family she has, as far as she knows, is her uncle. And she wants to go with him to the north. She's always wanted to go to the north. He won't let her. And this is the first idea that we get. There's something to do with dust.
Right, because dust comes up in Lord Asriel's presentation.
He shows pictures of it.
Yeah, and it's dust with a capital D. And you get the fun little tick of, I think, where Lyra's like, oh, she could hear, like, that she could hear the capital D. We know it's capital D because we're reading it, but it's cute to see that little nod that even that Lyra can tell that it's a significant. Yeah.
It's like a proper noun. And dust is something that shows up in the Aurora Borealis in the north. And in the Aurora Borealis, you can actually see an entire city that seems to be made of this stuff. Like glowing golden city in the sky. And the dust seems to be coming from the sky. It is all over adults. It is not on children. And at this point, that's really all we know about it. But it's very clear that this is something significant.
And it dust has significance also it has religious significance. I think we're kind of clued into that early, because you hear, what is it, the church or the magisterium, something?
No, you don't hear about the magisterium.
Well, you hear the general oblation board, don't you?
No, we have not gotten even close to that yet. Yeah, we're still like in like the first chapter. We're not doing very good. We're gonna move along. So anyway, Lord Asriel leaves for the north. There's a bunch of chapters discussing Lyra playing with her friends and like her very sporadic studies with the deans. It also mentions the gobblers. This is when we get our gobblers.
Yes.
Children start disappearing. There's a scene with a little boy who goes missing. A woman comes to him with her golden monkey daemon, and the monkey...
Super nice lady, strange lady, walks up to you and is like, hey, Charlie.
And her monkey grabs the kid's daemon, a little sparrow, off his shoulder, and he's basically forced to come with her.
Yeah, it's a kidnapping, for sure.
And
it's a literal child napping.
And all of the other children he meets when he's taken to where she's going... They're all like him with kind of a drunkard mom or a missing dad.
Right.
Like poor street kids who aren't going to be missed. Yeah. But as time goes on, kids of more and more significance start to go missing.
it becomes this kind of... It becomes, in many ways, almost like an urban legend.
It kind of reminds me of the clown scare from a few years ago. They're like, don't go out at night or the gobblers will get you.
Yeah, it becomes this, like, whispered legend that's passed amongst the children of Oxford to look out for the gobblers, and they've, gotten Tommy over across the other ways, and my cousin in this city knows someone who went missing. But
then, a little boy named Billy... What is their last name?
Costa.
Billy Costa, one of the Egyptian children, goes missing. And his mother, Ma Costa, is hysterical. She's looking for him all over town. It seems like she knows that he's been taken by the gobblers because she's upset. He's only been gone a couple hours.
Well,
and she's upset.
She gets kind of that classic line from some of the other townspeople that, oh, well, he probably just ran off somewhere and he'll be back. Like, he's probably just a runaway. That I feel like a lot of more marginalized families tend to get. They're like the idea that, oh, well, you live on kind of the outskirts and the edges of society, so if your child runs away, it doesn't matter.
Right. So Billy Costa goes missing, and this is when I started to be interested in Lyra and her character, particularly, is that she organizes groups of children to go looking for him, and in the process of looking for Billy, they realize that another child is missing. One of the kitchen staff, a little boy named Roger. Who is Lyra's personal friend, like a close friend of hers that she spends a lot of time with. So she's upset. She's looking for Roger. She goes back to the school, Jordan College, and one of the housemaids catches her and makes her get dressed up and wash her hair. And she's, yelling about, you don't care about Roger, and getting the same story of oh, well, he's probably just out playing and he'll show up. And then she is brought back downstairs to the master's office, and he introduces her to Ms. Coulter. And Miss Coulter, Lyra does not know this at this time, because she's the book. It's that dramatic tension of we know something that the character doesn't.
Right. Because we've already gotten the scene with the
little boy, who was kidnapped. This is the woman who kidnapped him. The beautiful dark-haired woman with the golden monkey, Damon. That's Ms. Coulter, and she is presented as a wealthy woman, an explorer who is looking for an assistant to help her prepare to go on a trip north for some scientific research. And Lyra is immediately taken with this woman. She desperately wants to go with her, and she's told she will. But then she has a very, very odd conversation the morning that she is to leave. She is woken up early by one of the housemaids who says, the master of the college wants to see you in his office right now before you leave with Miss Coulter. And he brings her into the office, and he gives her a gift, which is the
alethiometer.
The alethiometer, a.k.a. the golden compass.
Oh.
From the name. The alethiometer is a golden compass-like device that has 4 arrows on it, 3 of which can be moved around to point at different symbols, and 1 that moves of its own volition. And he tells her that it will tell her the truth. And he also tells her that she cannot tell anybody about it, especially Ms. Coulter. And he starts to tell her something about Lord Asriel and the alethiometer, but he is interrupted by Miss Coulter coming to collect Lyra. And he seems very upset that she's being made to leave. But Lyra leaves with Miss Coulter. She goes to stay at Miss Coulter's house. There's a shopping montage.
Oh, yeah, boy.
Lyra gets fancy new clothes. She gets her hair done. She gets her nails painted.
Honestly, yes. If I was Lyra at this point, I would be living. I'd be like, this lady I've never met before wants to, be my mom. And, we can hang out and buy shit all the time. Amazing.
So, for the first little while, Lyra is pretty content with this.
Anyway, I just remembered I had a shot before we started this wine. That just reoccurred to me.
You just are feeling it now? So, Ms. Coulter takes Lyra to her home, lets Lyra do research about the North, lets Lyra help her buy supplies. But the longer Lyra's there, the more she thinks she's not actually going to be allowed to go north. And the more controlling Ms. Coulter becomes.
Lyra's like, this is a weird, shitty, manipulative, controlling person shit. Radar goes off.
Basically, Ms. Coulter starts to insist, Lyra feels like she's being dressed up like a little doll.
Oh, she feels like the monkey is spying on her.
She feels like the monkey is spying on her.
When they're trying to read the alethiometer and figure out what the hell is going on with that.
And it all comes to a head the day of a party that Ms. Coulter is holding at her house, and she's asking Lyra for her advice on flower arrangements or something, and Lyra gets kind of irritated, and they get into an argument, and the golden monkey grabs Pan and is pulling on his wings or something. I can't remember. He basically attacks Pan and is hurting him, and because the daemon is an extension of their human, it hurts Lyra too. So basically Lyra was told to do something, and when she disobeyed, Miss Coulter attacks her, more or less, through the daemons. And at that point, Lyra realizes this is completely untenable. This woman is crazy.
This bitch a psychopath.
And she has to get out of here. So she follows instructions. She goes about her... Oh, it's because she wanted to wear her purse to the party with the alethiometer in it. She felt like she was being spied on, and so she wanted to wear her little shoulder bag with her at the party because she didn't want the monkey to get its hands on it. And Miss Coulter basically attacked her because she refused to take this shoulder bag off. So Lyra goes to the party, and at the party she starts to hear some weird shit. First about dust, and then about
the General Oblation Board.
The General Oblation Board, GOB.
Dun dun dun. Gobblers.
The gobblers. And she finds out that Ms. Coulter is the organizer of the gobblers and is the one who has been kidnapping all these children.
So Lyra's like, what the fuck? Time to get out of here.
So she runs away, and she is attacked by some street thugs and rescued by the Costas family.
Yep. Ma Costa back at it again.
Ma Costa and her older son, Tony.
Yes.
Rescue Lyra and bring her onto their boat as they're traveling down the river. They've heard that there is a golden-haired little girl who has gone missing, and there's a big reward out for her. So they're keeping her under the decks, going so far as to even hide her into a secret compartment at one point. Ma Costa is very dedicated to Lyra and very much treats her as part of the family as they travel up the river to meet with the king of the Egyptians, which is
John Fa.
John Fa. That's right. So John Fa, this is when we meet John Fa and Fodder Comer. And John Fa and Fodder Comer. John Fa is the king of the Egyptians, and Fodder Comer is his advisor, I guess, an old man who is his advisor. And they tell Lyra that because the Egyptians are traveling people, kind of like the Romas, no one has cared about their children going missing, and therefore, while there have been a lot of people off of land who have lost children to the gobblers, it's hit the Egyptians particularly hard. I think he says 1 in every 2 families has had a child taken.
Yeah.
And so they've decided they're going to fucking do something about it. He basically gathers all Egyptian people together and says, you have 3 days to gather up as much money as you can, and each family donate as many men as you can to an expedition to go north and save the children, the Egyptian children and the land walkers alike. Mm-hmm. And John Fa I really like. There's a lot of cool. Moral backbone to this character, and Fodder Comer, both of them. Just very, because there are several Egyptians in the crowd who even say, why should we save the land children? And John Fa's like, are you going to walk into a prison full of children and say, I'm only taking these ones?
John Fa is the only man who deserves rights.
Yeah.
You heard it here first, kids.
And it goes even further because some of the people don't like having Lyra with them because there's Lyra with them because there's a bounty on her head. And John Fa's like, if money is worth more to you than your integrity, you can fucking leave. Lyra is our family and we're going to take care of her. And so Lyra has become fully ingratiated with the Egyptians, and she asks to go on the trip north. And at first they tell her no, but then they realize that she can read the alethiometer. She thought she couldn't. She's been playing with it.
She experiences a lot of doubt and uncertainty and frustration in learning to read the alethiometer because it's there
are 36 symbols around the edge, and they all have multiple meanings.
So it's like astrology, but times 3. It's 3 times as hard.
For example, the hourglass with the skull on it could mean death, or it could mean time.
Right, yeah, the symbols are symbols. They're inexact, they're metaphorical a lot of the time.
The biggest kicker is there is a book that tells what each symbol means, but there's only one available, and Lyra doesn't have it. So she's going purely on instinct. She'll just turn the arrows to different things.
Yeah, and
then just hold it and think.
Yeah, it's interesting to watch her improve at reading the alethiometer as she gains kind of more self-confidence and is more firm in who she is and what she's here to do.
Yeah. Yeah, because she definitely... But I think the first thing is she comes to them. The way that they learn that she can read the alethiometer is she's been playing with it. She doesn't feel confident in it. She comes to them and says, one of the spies you sent out to get information about the North, I keep asking it about him because I'm worried about him, and it keeps coming up on this hourglass with the skull. I think something has happened to him. And literally while she is having this conversation with Father Comer, one of the spies' assistants or allies shows back up and is like, so-and-so is dead.
She can read the alethiometer.
And so this knowledge makes them feel like they have to take her along because she's going to be able to help. She's going to be invaluable to the mission. So this is where Lyra finally gets her dream and gets to go north in the third section of the book here. And so they go north on a big boat.
Big old boat.
They go on a big boat, and when they get to...
we did forget some kind of important information, which is that John Fa tells Lyra who her real parents are.
Oh shit, how did we miss that?
Spoiler alert, it's Lord Asriel and Ms. Coulter.
Yes, Lord Asriel and Ms. Coulter had a torrid affair while she was married to another man, and then Lord Asriel...
Which, honestly, I feel like you can kind of tell ahead of time, because there's reference to how they, like, kind of don't... they were at, like, loggerheads with each other.
They're at loggerheads with each other. There's also 3 or 4 people who ask Lyra at the party if she's Ms. Coulter's daughter.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Presumably because she looks like her. Although she's got golden hair instead of the dark hair. But yes, Lord Asriel is actually her father. What had happened was he and Miss Coulter had an affair that had resulted in a baby. They had tried to hide it, but Ms. Coulter's husband had attacked Lyra and her nanny, and they had been hidden in a closet, and Lord Asriel had come and killed the man to protect them. And that's also when we find out that the woman who basically nursed and raised Lyra was Ma Costa.
Ma Costa. Dramatic reveal.
So Ma Costa had actually begged to be allowed to keep Lyra as her own child, but Lord Asriel had decided to take her to Jordan College instead, and then made them all tell her that he was her uncle. So Lyra's going through it with that revelation, particularly with Ms. Coulter, because Lord Asriel she already had a sort of fondness for. And she also thinks he's pretty noble, even though he's scared. She mentions he scares her, but she also thinks he's very cool.
I definitely get the sense that Lyra looks up to Lord Asriel in the beginning of the story, because, to her, he's this mythic figure who gets to, like, go on adventures to the Great North and, like, do all kinds of interesting travel and research and learning and...
Well, and she tells tall tales about him to all of her friends.
Yeah. You definitely get the sense that she admires him and hopes to kind of follow in his footsteps.
So initially when she finds out he's her father, she's thrilled. She has these very childish visions of, like, going... Because we've also found out at this point that he has been captured by... The polar bears, the Panzerbjorn.
Dem bears.
Panzerbjorn, under the instruction of Ms. Coulter, he is being kept in the Panzerbjorn fortress in the north, which no one is impregnable.
Which, isn't a Panzer like a German tank? These are basically tank bears.
They're armored bears.
God, they're actually terrifying.
Called. So that might be Panzer, might be armored truck.
Panzerbjorn.
Because Bjorn is bear.
Yeah.
So it's armored bear just in German, basically.
Maybe. I don't know enough German to say for sure.
But anyway, wow, we are way behind it here. Okay. Well, no, it's not really. That's not true.
No,
just
we're fine.
Shit pops off at the end.
Shit pops off at the end.
Okay. So...
The Panzerbjorn.
So Lord Asriel has been captured, so she has these fantasies now that she knows that he's her father of like rescuing him, and they go together to rescue Roger.
Basically, she's like, "Oh, you're my dad. Cool. We can have a whole happy family shindig now."
She does not feel the same way about Ms. Coulter.
No, presumably because Ms. Coulter's daemon like fucking
Miss Coulter's Damon is
abused her.
maybe one of the most unsettling characters in the book.
Yeah.
And he doesn't ever say anything.
No.
Like, I didn't realize
The
that
other Damons talk, yeah.
He does not talk at all.
No, that monkey's terrifying as fuck. And I think there's a thing in the beginning, like, even right in the beginning of the book, there's specifically a line that, like, Mrs. Coulter looks really nice and sweet and kind and just, like, a totally chill young lady that you would be like, this is fine. I can trust you. But the monkey is fucking mean as hell. And that it's a dead giveaway that, like, she might be nice and, like, kind on the outside, but on the inside she is cruel.
Well, and there's
and
a lot,
only cares about herself.
And there's a lot of this in the book. There's a lot of times where Lyra or other characters will watch someone's daemon when they talk to them, because even if the person is hiding their emotions, most of the time the daemon will reflect what they're really feeling.
Yeah.
The exception to this seems to be Pan, who, if Lyra is determined enough to hide how she's feeling, does a very good job of also hiding it. Mm-hmm. I've noticed there are 3 or 4 instances of that.
And Pan also, a lot of the time, will, like, go against Lyra. Like, if she wants to do something reckless and impulsive and dangerous, he's usually the one saying, are you crazy? We shouldn't do that.
It's not safe.
We could die. Yeah. He's usually the voice of reason to her daring do. Yeah, so
they have a very balanced relationship, as opposed to, for example, Miss Coulter and this monkey, who seem very, very different. And the monkey is very, very... I don't know what it is. Like, it does a couple of scary things in the book, but not that much to be as unsettling as I picture it.
Yeah.
Like, it's just the way it's written. And the fact that... And I didn't even notice it until I finished the book, that it never, at any point, ever speaks.
Yeah.
And the others do. And it says that daemons very rarely speak to other humans, other than their own, but they speak to each other pretty frequently.
Yeah.
So it is very unsettling. And so she is not interested in having Miss Coulter as her mother. She does not feel any connection from that information or revelation the way she does with Lord Asriel.
Yeah, she's 100% on the Lord Asriel is the best dad ever train.
Which is wild because, again... In the first chapter, she said she was afraid of him, and he wrenched her arm so hard that he almost broke her wrist. So, like, it's a weird... Again, that also goes to the timeline, though, too. Like, when would a young woman allow herself to be manhandled by a guy like that and not? Like, I mean, that still happens, but, like, that it was just an expected commonplace behavior, right?
Right.
So, anyway, either way, she goes north. They come to a town, an outpost in the north. And they find some allies. They go to this town specifically because Father Comer knows a witch.
Serafina Pekkala.
Pekkala, that's right. Serafina Pekkala.
We stan one witch, and it is Serafina fucking Pekkala. So, okay, sidebar, in the 2007 movie, it's, what's her name? Ava Green, right? Oh my god, she is... so hot. I'm so gay for her. I saw that stupid Dark Shadows movie from Tim Burton, and she was in it, and she was like an evil vampire. She was so hot. I love her. She's a lesbian icon.
I'm gonna take your wine away.
Don't. Ava Green deserves this.
We have 15 minutes.
Ava Green fans, right?
Shh.
Anyways, she was Serafina Pekkala, which is like a big mood.
So Serafina Pekkala is a witch who had been knocked from the sky 40 years previously, and Father Comer had saved her life. And so she owed him a debt. And so he is like, well, there's a witches group here a witches coven here in this town. So let's go talk to them, see if they can get in contact with Serafina Pekkala, give us information or help us in some way. So they go to meet the witches. The witches' council are very interested in Lyra and her alethiometer. Dr. Lancelius asks Lyra for a reading of the alethiometer, several readings actually, and is very impressed. He keeps talking about her destiny, and this is interesting. Her destiny is to basically be like a chosen one hero type. But we don't know what she's supposed to do, and
she can't know it.
She can't know it. She has to make the choices for herself, which is a very interesting... This gets every time. This whole concept gets me every time. But if destiny and fate are real, can those things coexist with choice and free will?
I mean, I think probably, because there's.
I mean,
you could
because
also,
you think
like,
about, like, you
choose
think about
the way that you get to your destiny. I mean,
think about, for example, my first thought would be Oedipus, right? Oedipus is...
I want that as, like, just a pull quote. My first thought would be Oedipus.
Put it on a t-shirt.
But yes.
get some merch. Yeah, so Oedipus, if you don't know the story, what are you doing?
Don't lack of
Greek literature
ancient
say.
myth shame people.
You're right.
Not
sorry.
everybody is into Greek myth, Casey, and that's okay.
I'm gay, Karina. So anyway, Oedipus is a prophecy is made when Oedipus is born. He's born to the king and queen, and the prophecy that is made is that he will kill his father and marry his mother. Obviously, the king and queen are horrified.
They're
for
like,
this.
fuck that. They send the baby away.
They send the baby away. I think they
Fuck destiny. Get this baby the fuck out of here.
Get this baby out of
They
here.
send it out to the desert.
To
die.
They're like,
to
just
die.
Just let this baby die. But he is found and raised.
And rescued by this other family.
Once he becomes of age, he leaves town.
Well, yeah, and doesn't he also go to, like, some kind of fortune reader who's like, you're gonna kill your dad and marry your mom? So he fucking leaves town.
He leaves town to avoid that.
To avoid his destiny and travels to this other city.
And he meets a man on the road.
Oh, yeah.
He meets a man on the road, gets
Guess
into
what?
a quarrel with
Guess
him,
what?
and kills him. And then he goes into the town.
Guess who that was?
It was his dad. And then he goes into the town, finds that their king has disappeared and not come back.
Weird.
He solves the Sphinx's riddle.
I love that we diverged into Oedipus for some reason.
The point is that 2 separate times in the Oedipus story, someone tried to divert destiny.
Yeah, and it fucking just backfires in their faces.
So the concept of destiny and the concept of free will seem inherently at odds. And then in this particular story, Philip Pullman suggests something else, which is that and it's kind of even bleaker if you actually say it out loud, because what I'm going to say out loud is going to sound bleak.
I'm ready for this galaxy brain take.
As long as you don't know you don't have free will, it still counts as free will.
What the fuck, bitch? That is some The Good Place bullshit.
But isn't that what he's saying? Lyra has to do this of her own free will, but it is her destiny. But if you tell her that it's her destiny, she's going to fail to do it because she has to have free will to do it.
Bruh,
so basically, free
know.
will only exists within the mind.
I'm not trying to think about that shit right now.
I'm doing literary analysis. That's what this podcast is for.
I thought it was about drinking.
And also literary analysis.
The one makes me very bad at the other.
Anyway, the point is, free will, do we have it? Who can say?
Whomst can say?
Lyra thinks she has it, but basically these other people are being told that she does. So anyway, they meet 2 people here in town. Basically, Seraphina's people help them by saying there is an armored bear in town.
Named Yorick Byrnison.
Yorick would be a very good help to you if you could get him to come with you. They also meet Lee Scoresby.
Who Casey stands because Casey is just a Lin-Manuel Miranda stan, and he plays Lee Scoresby in the new HBO adaptation.
So therefore, I love Lee Scoresby.
Watched.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
I love Lee Scoresby.
We stand.
Say
Lee.
it with me. Miranda.
No, so I was gonna say Lee Scoresby.
I know. I combined their names. Lynn Scoresby.
Miranda. Lynn Scoresby
Lynn
Miranda.
Scoresby Miranda. We stand. Lin-Manuel Miranda, listen to my podcast. Anyway. So Lee Scoresby is
He's a Texan aeronaut.
Texan aeronaut. Like, holy shit.
Fucking, we love to see it.
But that's also kind of like the steampunk you talked about, right? Like,
yeah.
He's got a fucking balloon.
There's no fucking airplanes, but there sure are zeppelins,
and
you know?
And
that's how you know you're in a steampunk setting.
If there's zeppelins instead of airplanes, it's steampunk.
It's steampunk.
This is advice for you, just in case you're confused.
If you look up in the sky...
and there's zeppelins, you're in a steampunk novel.
No plane, but there's many zeppelins.
You're in a steampunk.
You're in steampunk now, baby.
Congratulations.
Forget it, Jake. It's steampunk.
Holy shit. So anyway, we met Lee Scoresby, who has been hired to help the expedition. And now they're trying to hire the armored bear.
Yorick.
Yorick is a drunk, and he has no armor.
He's the Jack Sparrow of bears.
Wowie zowie.
That's not true at all.
That's not even remotely true.
Just drunk and unarmored.
Jack Sparrow is both those things, but like, I mean, character-wise, that's not quite it. But thank you. Thank you for your contribution. Anyway, Yorick is actually very noble. It turns out that he was exiled from the bears for killing another bear in a competition that was not supposed to be to the death, but there was some kind of misunderstanding. He is now working here, and at first we think he's working here because he wants to, and then we find out that they stole his armor when he first came to town, and he went on a rampage and destroyed the town, and he's basically an indentured servant. But they're never going to give his armor back, and apparently Panzerbjorn armor is basically like their soul in the same way that a daemon is a human soul.
Which is interesting because the ruling Panzerbjorn king is, we learned this early on, is like obsessed with getting a daemon of his own. Like, that's the only thing that he wants. He wants to be like equal to the humans. So the idea that the Panzerbjorn, they don't have demons, but the idea that their armor is their daemon.
And they build their own armor.
Yeah, it's interesting to see this this bear who's their king,
who wants to be a human,
who kind of rejects his bearhood and is like, I want to be a person instead.
So Lyra uses the alethiometer to find out where the armor is. She tells the bear. He goes and gets his armor, and basically they're like, hey, this bear is going to destroy your whole town if you don't just let him leave. Why don't you just let him leave? It's going to be easier than trying to keep him as an indentured servant. So he joins their party. He also becomes incredibly dedicated to Lyra.
Yeah, which I would too if I was like, a former cast out bear king with no like honor,
no
armor.
Some cute little fucking 13-year-old.
Right. Oh my God. It's like, hey, your armor's over there, big bear man. Hey, do you want to help me save my friend who's also a small child? Great.
I have a very strong moral compass, just like you.
I have an army of Egyptians and this Texan aeronaut who support me. Join me.
So Lyra's just like building up the squad.
Respect.
And they're traveling out, and this is where things take a turn for it's almost like body horror, I would say. It almost is. Because they are almost to the weird, scary camp that they know is where the children probably are. And Lyra wants to take a diversion to this small village because she thinks that there is a dead child there, or a ghost. She thinks there's a ghost, and she thinks it might be of one of the children. Because the alethiometer is reading weird. It's telling her half bird over and over again. And they can't afford to cut off of the trail, but she and Yorick is the king.
No, Yorick is the guy that Lyra helps.
Their names are literally so similar. They're all 5 letters and start with I-O. What do you want from me?
They're Scandinavian bears, Casey. What do you want from them?
I'm not Scandinavian.
You're not a bear.
I can't.
Casey is not a bear.
Thank you for that astute observation. We've lost Karina completely. Anyway, they go off to the town and they find the first boy that was kidnapped by Ms. Coulter.
Tony Macarios.
And he does not have a daemon.
Yeah, so they find out, they're like, oh, the gobblers are not just kidnapping children, they're also cutting their daemons away from them, which is pretty fucked up and traumatic when you consider that a daemon is like a person's manifested soul.
Well, to go back to, again, the comparison with Harry Potter, in the Harry Potter novels, they have characters called Dementors, and Dementors suck out your soul. Literally. Very literally. And it's destroyed. And this is considered the worst possible punishment that a hardened criminal in jail can get. And even the criminals don't very often get it. So basically what's happening in the Golden Compass in the Harry Potter world is like considered like their capital punishment.
Yeah.
And this is just happening to random children. So Yorick and Lyra, they rescue Tony and bring him back to the camp. Unfortunately, he dies very shortly thereafter. He just cannot handle being without his daemon.
Yeah, he can't survive without his daemon.
And so he dies. And he is one of the longer-lasting children from what we understand. Then, the party is attacked by, I almost said Tusken Raiders, god damn it.
Tartars.
Tartars, who are the people native to the area, who attack the party, kill some of the people, and kidnap Lyra, and then sell her.
They take her to this facility in Bollinger where the General Oblation Board is holding all these children that they've kidnapped.
They basically sell her to the General Oblation Board.
The Gobblers.
And the Gobblers are doing experiments on children. They'll do tests on them. They'll prod and poke at their daemons, try to figure out what's going on with them. The other thing that's unsettling here is that the nurses and doctors all have daemons, but their daemons don't react much to anything. And Lyra notices that, but doesn't really make the connection at first. She's meeting the children and trying to find out what's going on. Eventually, there is a fire drill, and she finds Roger and Billy. And eventually, during the fire drill, she and Roger discover where all of the daemons are being kept after they're severed from the children. And there are several cages that are empty, including like Tony's daemon's cage, suggesting the daemon dies as soon as the human dies, just like in regular life. Like if a daemon or a human is killed, their opposite also dies. So when Tony died, his daemon died. The other daemons that are there are faded and kind of messed up. And so they use Serafina Piccola comes. She's the one who showed them this. Her daemon is the goose. Because witches.
Do you think Serafina Peccola's daemon is the goose from Untitled Goose Game?
I thought of it as much bigger, browner goose.
A bigger, browner goose.
Anyway, witches' daemons can actually travel far away from them. And so the goose comes and helps them to free those daemons, and then the goose takes them all in different various bird forms and flies them away, hoping to reunite them with their children. Although they will never be whole again.
Yeah,
which is kind of horrifying.
It's a big oof. And there's a big weird religious sexual undertone to the whole thing. Because the whole thing about dust being attracted to adults but not kids, it's kind of tied up with this idea that as kids go through puberty and gain like their kind of identity and solidify who they are, and their daemon becomes fixed, that's all tied up with like they're losing their innocence, they're like becoming experienced and
basically
becoming an adult.
Basically, the church has determined that dust is a physical manifestation of the original sin.
Yeah.
And sin only, and according to the Catholic Church at least, sin only touches you once you are an adult and can make choices for yourself.
So the General Oblation Board is, to any observer, is terribly cruel in cutting these children's daemons away from them. Like, that's causing so much suffering. But they to them, it's like, well, we're taking away the opportunity for you to ever, for your innocence to ever be ruined. Like, you'll always be like kind of pure and unsullied. It's fucked up. It's
very fucked up. It gets even more wild later, but we'll get to that. So at any rate, basically, Lyra organizes an escape plan, but as she is trying to enact it, she is captured. And they decide that since she has heard too much information, all this information about dust is stuff that she hears while hiding in the vents. Since she's heard all this information, that they just have to separate her from her daemon now. And it comes very, very close, but
Miss Coulter stops them.
Miss Coulter rolls in and is like, what the fuck? That's my daughter. We're not going to do that to her. Also tries to explain to Lyra why it's okay to do it to other people.
Right, but like Lyra, to her immense credit, immediately twigs, well, if it was such a good thing, you wouldn't have stopped these people from doing it to me.
And then Mrs. Coulter tries to go even a step farther and say, the process has been done to plenty of adults, all the doctors and nurses here. And that's when Lyra realizes why she was so unsettled by the daemons of the nurses, because they are disconnected. They still stay with them, but they're disconnected from them. They're not whole anymore.
Yeah, it's fucked up.
It's very fucked up. Luckily, Lyra manages to escape Miss Coulter by cleverly using a spy, and again, another very steampunk thing. There was like a a mechanical beetle that had spied on them earlier, and she manages to trick Miss Coulter into releasing it. And when it's attacking Miss Coulter, she runs, sets the entire place on fire, pulls the fire alarm, and escapes with all the children. And it's a very intense scene. Lots is going on. But in the end of the scene, the children are rescued by the Egyptians.
Yeah, the Egyptians and Yorick roll up just as Lyra and the rest of the kids are breaking out, which is great timing.
So the Egyptians save the children, and Lyra, Yorick, Roger, and Lee Scoresby fly away in his balloon. Barely escaping Ms. Coulter, who follows them on like a fucking motorbike or some shit.
Yeah.
And the witches join them in the sky. Serafina Piccola and her coven start to pull the balloon even further north to the armored bear
Svalbard,
the armored bear fortress. And
which is where Lord Asriel is being held prisoner.
Basically, the plan is to get the alethiometer to Lord Asriel at this point.
Lyra finds out that Yorick is actually the rightful king of the bears.
And that the reason that he was exiled is because when he was fighting this bear, since it was not a battle to the death, the bear was supposed to stand down, but he never did. And so Yorick killed him. His temper got the better of him and he killed him. But there was a lot of suspicion around why the bear had not backed down, because that was the standard protocol for these kind of fights. And they thought that maybe that the new king of the bears had influenced that battle in some way. And so Yorick is not allowed back onto the bear's land at pain of death. And as they are flying there,
they're attacked by cliff ghasts.
The balloon is downed. Just Lyra at first is stranded.
Roger and Lee Scoresby and the bear
float back up into the sky, and Lyra is captured by the armored bears and brought before
Ragnarsson.
Brought before Yofer. Now Yofer does not grant her an audience. She's thrown into prison, but she's very clever.
She recalls that the one thing that Yofer wants more than anything is a daemon so that he can be like the humans. So she tricks Yofer by telling him that she's Yorick's daemon. And if he defeats Yorick in a fight, then
in one-on-one combat.
Yes, in one-on-one combat, then she will become Yofer's daemon instead.
It's a bit of a desperate ploy, because the thing is, she knows that if Yorick rolls up on the bear fortress without Yofer's say, he's going to be killed from a distance by fire arrows. So this is basically just her getting him the opportunity to even get to the fort. And then there is a very intense bear fight. Lots of blood. And for a while it doesn't seem like it's going well, but Yorick does come out on top. As soon as he does, the other bears express their happiness at this. They were clearly kind of under some sort of thrall, kind of being made to act human when they did not want to, because this one bear was obsessed with being human.
Really? I didn't get thrall energy so much as kind of when the leader of kind of an emperor has the emperor's new clothes situation. The person in power is this is what's cool and good, and so everybody just kind of kowtows to that.
Sure.
Without challenging it.
But at any rate, Yorick takes his place as the leader of the bears. He renames Lyra Silvertongue for her clever ploy there. And he takes Lyra to Lord Asriel.
Asriel is not happy to see Lyra.
He says, "I didn't call for you," and he seems very distraught until he sees that Roger is with her. And then his entire mood changes. He brings Lyra to have a dinner with him. He tries to explain to her Dust. He tries to explain to her the relationship he had with Ms. Asriel.
He tells her the story of
Ms. Asriel.
Oof. He tells her the story of Adam and Eve. So that's kind of our a bracing reminder that this world is somewhat like ours, just not quite exactly the same. Because a lot of the stuff with armored polar bears, it's easy to be this is a fantasy world, but...
Well, and Adam and Eve, the story is the same, except for that it specifically mentions their daemons.
Oh, yeah.
And that Adam and Eve, as adults, had daemons who could shift shapes still until they ate the apple, and that's when the daemons took on their true form.
Mysterious.
So that's where the idea that Dust is the
original
manifestation
sin.
of original sin came from. And Lord Asriel is less interested in this am more interested in trying to open up the portal between worlds.
Which is something that happens when the daemons are cut away from the children. It releases this energy.
This huge amount of energy.
Yeah, and that's what opens the door to another world that is kind of like a parallel universe of our own, where things might be very similar, but just slightly different. So that it's pretty much directly acknowledging that Lyra's universe is just like a parallel universe of our own, where things went just a little bit differently.
Right. But what Lyra doesn't understand whenever Lord Asriel is explaining this to her is the reason he is interested in separating a child from their daemon is for that energy so that he can open that portal.
Yeah.
She doesn't realize quickly enough that he plans to do that. And the reason he was so unhappy to see her is
because he didn't want to sacrifice Lyra to be
daughter.
able to get to one of these other worlds.
But when he saw Roger,
he's like, I can kill that kid. I don't know that kid.
So Lord Asriel kidnaps Roger in the dead of night and takes off with him. Lyra and the polar bear follow. Eventually she has to leave Yorick behind because she comes to an ice bridge that he can't cross. She crosses the bridge and tries to help Roger, but is not successful. Roger is killed and separated from his daemon and killed almost immediately. And Lord Asriel successfully opens a doorway to another universe.
Very chill, my homie.
And then Ms. Coulter shows up. And this is something I want to talk about. When Ms. Coulter shows up, there is a very weird, contentious... There's a scene between them because she is worried about the quote-unquote original sin element of dust, and he wants to just visit other worlds. And he's trying to get her to join him. And there's some, like, kissing that happens, and like, but the weird thing that's like going on with that is like there's like a weird interaction going on between their daemons at the same time, like the monkey's like crawling on the like snow leopard's belly, and then like the snow leopard's got the monkey's like in its jaws, and like very weird interaction between them while there is like a physical romantic or sexual interaction going on between Lord Asriel and Ms. Coulter, which is just very weird and discomforting, especially considering this whole implication with dust being like the ruination of innocence. You know, it's just like, it was very stark in contrast to that. It was something that you definitely could notice and comment upon in terms of how original sin and the loss of innocence, and that's kind of tied up with a sexual component, right?
Yeah.
Because there was still like, while there was something that was like physical or sexual going on between Ms. Coulter and Lord Asriel, there was also something physical going on between the daemons. And that was like, but that's not how it happens with children's daemons, and that's why you've got to cut them away from their daemons before they get to that point. Weird fucking church bullshit, right? Very unsettling. So the book like literally ends with Lord Asriel, like with
Lord Asriel's like, well, I'm gonna go to this new fucking universe I just found.
Bye.
And yeet. And then Lyra's like, I better go after this bitch.
Yeah, because he tries to get Ms. Coulter to go with him, but she refuses. And then Lyra and Pan decide they have to follow him. And it even says in the front of this book here, the first volume is set in a universe like ours, but different in many ways. The second volume is set in the universe we know, and the third volume will move between the universes. So the portal he opened, apparently, that is in the subtle knife, will take him to our universe. So I'm interested to see how that goes in the next book. But it ends very much on a cliffhanger. And like I was saying this to Karina the other day, it was like, you know, sometimes you get a trilogy of books and you can read a book and it's standalone and you don't have to continue to like finish the story. But there are still so many unanswered questions at the end of this book. Like really, you can't be satisfactorily finished with it without reading the rest of the series, I don't think.
Which is funny because I started reading The Subtle Knife and it didn't grab me, and so I never finished it. And Casey finds this abhorrent.
I don't understand not finishing a book, even if you hate it. I mean, like, there's one book in our 2-year span of this podcast that I did not finish. Overall, it has a lot of really interesting themes in it. I love to come back to specifically I want to know more about daemons. I want to know more about, like, why some people have daemons the same gender as them. Like, why are daemons, usually of opposite genders? Like, that's something that interests me personally.
If you had a daemon, what would your daemon be? Would you like to take a BuzzFeed quiz? There's a BuzzFeed quiz.
Is there a BuzzFeed quiz?
Oh, I have it pulled up already.
Oh, you were prepared.
I'm ready.
Did you take it yet?
No. We'll just take it for Casey. What are you like at parties?
I think I am having fun with my existing friends, maybe playing a party game.
If you see your partner flirting with someone else, what is your reaction? Murder.
That's not true. I'm not that jealous of a person.
No, murder of me.
I mean, it's not. There's not an option on here to just go over there and start flirting with your partner, which is probably what I would do.
Go over there and make it clear to everyone that they're yours. You're running late to a meeting with a friend. What do you do?
You're late so often they probably showed up 30 minutes later than planned, preemptively.
How do you shop for clothes?
You're very picky and only buy when you find the perfect thing.
When you have to make a big life decision, how do you go about making it?
Go with my gut.
How do you deal with heartbreak?
Wallow.
What word would you like your friends to use to describe
what word
you?
would you like your friends? Oh, that's a good question.
Yee.
Creative.
Which of these negative traits would you say you're most guilty of?
All of them. I get accused of being aloof a lot. I got a husky.
Aww. That seems pretty legit.
Your daemon would happily by your side and immediately let you know which people are distrustful. You remain loyal to your friends forever and ask the same in return. You're non-judgmental and see people as people. Treat everyone with the same amount of respect, regardless of their social status or lack thereof. Well, there you go. So, Karina, the very end of every podcast, we ask, how many bottles would you give it?
I know.
1 out of 5.
I would give it 5 bottles.
Well, damn.
I liked it. I'd read it again. I offered to read it again. I tried to read it again. I just didn't have time to finish it.
I don't think I've ever given a book 5 bottles.
Oh, I just assume, why would you not just give a 5 to everything you liked well enough to read again? Isn't that the ultimate recommendation of a book, if you would read it again?
There's room for improvement in everything. This particular book...
5. I stand by it.
I'm going to be obnoxious today. I'd give it a 3.75.
Jeez.
I think the highest rating I've given a book on this podcast is Good Omens. And I think I gave it 4.75. Because there are other things I would have liked to see it do, like make a Xerophil and Curly Kiss, that it didn't do. So, no, I would give this book 3.75 because it took me a while to get attached to Lyra and her character, and I was more interested in the things that happened after Oxford. Like, I do agree with you that I liked the setting of the Oxford colleges, but like I don't feel like a lot happened in those chapters. Like the first third of the book, it is split into 3 sections. There was not nearly as much action as in the second and third. So for that reason, I'd give it almost 4, but not quite 4 bottles. I guess 3.75 and 5. What's that average out? Like 4.25? Thereabouts?
Sure.
Math is stupid. It's 10 o'clock at night.
4 something.
A little over 4 bottles, which is not bad. You should definitely check it out. We got it at Half Price Books, so there you go.
Support your local indie bookseller.
Half Price Books sponsor my podcast. Anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, follow us on litliteraturepodcast.com, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. And since Liz isn't here to remind you, we do have a Patreon. Karina and I are getting married. Liz has babies now. We could use your help. So donate if you want. Otherwise, we'll see you back in a couple of weeks. I'm going to be recording with our friend Allie. We're recording The Family Upstairs, which is a suspense thriller.
Spooky.
With a murder mystery element to it. So that should be a lot of fun. So look out for that at the end of the month. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you all next time.
Bye.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. For more information, visit us at litliteraturepodcast.com or check out our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages. And remember, too much work and no vacation deserves at least a small libation. Cheers!